Hey everybody. This month we read The Rainbow by Yasunari Kawabata. I'm sure that's not how it's pronounced, but we try our best. The book is about three daughters and their relationship with their father and their mother, since all three of them have different mothers. And the middle child, who her mom is the one who her dad ended up marrying of the three mothers, discovers a third child lives in Kyoto that she had never met. So the plot centers around her trying to meet her third sister. So yeah, what did you think?
I think overall I enjoyed the novel. I think what drew me in was his writing is very lyrical, especially when it got to describing the homes that were slowly being converted to inns. During the occupation, a lot of the homes of the Meiji government officials were being turned into inns. So when they go to these inns or these areas, he's very lyrical in his writing and is very descriptive. So that was what I liked. And also the author's take on individual citizens trying to grapple with post-war occupation and how they're trying to find a sense of normalcy while at the same time trying to connect with family members after this post-war event. So overall, I enjoyed the novel.
I read two of his other books before this, and it was part of the reason why I chose this, because I read Thousand Cranes and The Sound of the Mountain, which I really liked. And this kind of follows in a similar vein. The characters are written pretty similarly. They're very thoughtful and introspective and very unique, but it's still a very realistic portrayal, I think. And it brings the war in, but it focuses on the aspect of the people that were living in Japan throughout the war, before, during, and after. So it's like average people. And it kind of focuses on women's plight and what women went through during that time. So I thought that contrasted with the father, who is a well-known architect, and how he sees post-war Japan compared to his daughters and their mothers is very interesting. So he spends his time focusing on the flower arrangements and how some of these landmarks and shrines and temples became westernized in certain ways, and
or just forgotten in general.
Right. So his focus is on the design of the place, the architecture, how some of the older monks in one of the temples, how they're doing. He focuses on their mindset, and it's very different from the daughters, who are living their own lives in a post-war, trying to do their best and live their lives in a post-war Japan, where some of their boyfriends went off to the war and ended up dying, and what they need to do to survive when that happens in Japan. And there are some points where the daughters will look at some of the older women that are service workers, or not service workers, but like maids or things like that. And you could tell that part of them pities them, but also they understand, and they're getting information from them and using that to guide their own lives. Because one of the daughters, the one that was not part of the other two's lives, ended up becoming a geisha in post-war Japan because her mother was a geisha. And one of the other mothers was committed suicide, of the oldest daughter. And the story kind of focuses on the oldest daughter, how it affected her life and how it affected her relationship with her dad and her sisters, whom she knows. She has memories of what it was like when all the mothers were involved. all the different mothers of his children were involved in their lives, and what it was like when they weren't. And she's very keen on how it affected her. So I thought that was really interesting.
Well, what made there was an interaction, as Mike mentioned, like it was Momoko with the maid discussing like how much money she was making during this moment of time. And there was one moment when Momoko told her, like, because it was like honorifics, and there was basically the maid was doing that, and was, oh, you don't have to do that. There's no longer a social class, because there was a dismantling of the Meiji regime, along with like the prince and the nobleman and all the like these hierarchies that existed prior that no longer existing and are crumbling. And there was a commentary of like, well, what is social status? Obviously, Momoko and Osaka were their dad could have fell, but since he's this renowned architect, he still has a position where he can thankfully get paid. So they didn't fall, like their social class didn't fall that much. But there are people who lived in these social classes, and with the occupation, like they quickly fell. Or that in this instance, the maid, her husband, since he was a Marine in the army, they were basically stripped of their title and everything. So she basically had to try to figure out how to take care of 4 kids on a salary that she says, if I had 1 kid, maybe, but 4 kids, I don't know if I can make this work. The writing was powerful. The author was trying to, in a way, immortalize what was like the culture of the old Japan, by trying to see how it meshes with what would be the modern westernized version. So it's like a way of preservation, but seeing how can it survive in this new landscape. So it was interesting. The finding of the third daughter, I thought it would be more intense, because in the end we found out the third daughter actually wanted nothing to do with them. She's like, just please leave me alone. So that didn't mean so much. I think it was just like hearing the descriptions, bringing in the historical things of what happened in the government, how they're trying to move and live, was what was the most interesting. So I gave it 5 stars.
5 Kisas.
That's what I meant, 5 Kisas.
I'm giving it 5 Kisas too. His writing and his characters and the plots and the stories, they're all very contemplative. The transition that's happening in post-war Japan, going away from the isolated, nationalistic view and becoming a more global, I guess, entity.
But more so being forced to.
Right, but that there is a contrast to, well, some of it is forced, but that's what I'm saying, is that it's very contemplative. And it's in contrast to some of the other Nobel Prize winning Japanese authors from that era that wrote about post-war, pre-war Japan, pre-World War II Japan or pre-World War I, is that there are authors like Mishima, who was extremely nationalistic and actually took over a building and committed seppuku in protest of Japan becoming more global. And I think I only read one of his novels, but it was very like nationalistic and dealt with like the pride of Japan. And it's 2 young lovers on the beach, in like a beach, on the beach doing their thing. And this is way more, I think, philosophical, and it asks questions and it thinks about the past in a rosy way by some characters, but also in not a rosy way by others. And it asks questions about what's happening to Japan from the older characters and also younger characters. And it does, to me, an incredible job of showing characters that are what they're dealing with as a young person, what they're dealing with as a middle-aged person, what they're dealing with as an elderly person, as a person whose career is in the waning years because they're older, and they're seeing how things are changed now versus then. You get heart-wrenching stories. Like I loved a part of this book about how the older sister reflects about how soldiers in Japan that went to World War II were given cyanide capsules. Every soldier, pretty much, if you were enlisted. And her boyfriend left his pills, and she was planning on committing suicide. I think after she found out he had died, because it was stashed away. And it talks about how she took the pills, but because they were replaced with sugar pills by the stepmom, who ended up marrying their father of the middle character, the middle daughter, replaced it because she felt that she was going to do that, or she had her own views on the cyanide capsules, and it saved her life. And this daughter reflects on that. And it's nothing is black and white in these stories, which I love. Even if the characters feel that way, you as the reader realize that that's not the case. So it's incredible. It's only about 200 pages. I loved it. Absolutely 5 stars. I loved his other books too, especially The Sound of the Mountain. But
So
yeah,
if you had to compare out of the three, so three
The
or four,
three?
how would you rank them? Like, how would you rank this amongst his catalog that you read so far?
so for me, Sound of the Mountain is number 1 because it's the perspective. It's like an older man witnessing, just kind of sleepwalking and through his life in retirement, essentially, and witnessing his family and how they operate and how they run and what they're doing. And while thinking about things and worrying about things that are pertaining to his age. But you learn about Japan, but you also learn a language in how to describe Japan and how to explain Japan. Like you understand the flowers. You learn the different flowers that were at these temples, tea garden, tea rooms. You learn how to describe the fabrics of what they're wearing.
Yeah.
You learn how they talk to each other. You actually you can learn and understand the language that paints a picture of Japan that is very vibrant, but also very
Well, he
stark.
Well, he discusses life that, like, living with purpose, like how he would frame a scene around the opening and closing of these rooms, these old screens. Like, there would be rock placement, and he'll go into great detail, and everything had an intent. Where they chose to have tea, and they chose to open this scene, where they put the temples, where the bridges were, the cleaning, like, of the pathways. Like, every place had intention, and there was a purpose. And he showed that by getting very descriptive and actually making you as the reader focus on the scene in front of you or in front of the characters. So I would say, like, he's very poetic, lyrical, and I think it's all through his prose as well, like him being able to go on and describe something that may be as insignificant as a rock, but saying that these rock formations actually have a purpose, a visual purpose, and trying to explain that to the author. I think he did it very well without you noticing.
I agree. And another thing that was interesting about the story for me is that my mom is one of 3 daughters. And obviously she grew up way after World War II. She was born in the 50s and grew up way after World War II. But it is nice to see a story about 3 sisters. And even though it's not a one-to-one comparison by any means, it is cool to get a look into a really thoughtful, dramatic depiction of what siblings are thinking. And it's not my own experience, but they're very realistic characters and they're very human. It's just an interesting perspective. And obviously there's something in my life that kind of is similar.
I would say recommend 5 out of 5 Kisas.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yep. 5
This
Kisas.
is the first time that I gave Mike 5 out of 5, so it took us a while, but finally you did a good job.
Thanks. Yeah, I think anyone into Japanese culture, into drama, because it is a very dramatic book, and the plot is pretty simple, but it's to me it was really interesting, and the characters are great. So yeah, thanks for watching. We have a couple of interesting books coming up. Again, leave comments. We love to hear them. We love to read them, and we think a lot about these books after we're finished reading them, after we post the episode, some more than others. But yeah, we're always reading your comments. We are always looking for new recommendations, new books. And yeah.
So give us your thoughts. Just know we upload a video the first Sunday of every month. So ring that bell, like the video, and we hope to see you in the next one.
And also, Happy New Year.
We said that in the last video.
We did?
Yes, we did.
But this is the first episode of the new year.
This is going to be the first episode of the new year was Princess Bride.
Oh, you're right. We're cutting that. All right. Thanks. See ya. Bye-bye. Good call.